right, thank you everyone for being with us. Talk about live. You can always find new world news review with Miguel Flores and myself, Vicky Esther, on Lifestyle TV USA by Dr. Moby, the #1 professional podcast in America, awarded by Tally Awards, and also on my podcast, Talk About Live, on all podcast catchers and also international channel, Talk About Live, and also on IOW Network. And today we are so honored again to have Miguel Flores as my co-host for World News review for the week. Miguel, how are you? And let's dive into the first news.
All right, let's get it on. Thank you so much for introducing me. And let's check. The first news that I wanted to bring is basically something about the United States remembering the 9/11 attacks 20 years after. Actually, the news that I sent are more like pictures and the way the people reacted. Silence and tears as U.S. remembers 9/11 attacks. Basically, here we have something that maybe a lot of countries have to do. Don't forget what happened in their past, because maybe they are going to be tend to repeat it again. All right. So I guess this is one of those testaments that American society gives us a proof of why we should not forget what happened in the past, so we don't do the same mistakes again for whatever reason you want or whatever situation that happened before. It's always important to remember where we come from and what we did and what has brought us here up to this point.
Yeah, I thank Miguel for this news. Yes, today in Singapore is the 12th of September 2021, and I think according to your news, you've got all the presidents of America was lined up there, having that 1 minute silence and paying respect to those who passed on in that September 11 attack. And I think it really needs more remembrance from everyone, not just America, but also like yourself in Mexico, myself in Singapore, and the rest of the world to come together to understand each other, to forge understanding, to forge communication, so that there's less tension around the world. So thank you, Miguel, for that news. You've got the second news coming up from Denmark.
Yes, actually, this one is pretty amazing for me, because it shows us that, okay, the pandemic has been a lot longer than we expected or wanted, but this gives us the hope that we're on the right track. Okay, we also have to learn what other places are doing, so maybe we can take the best out of them. After more than 500 days, Denmark has ended its COVID restrictions. So basically, no more mask use, no more social distancing. This is the first of the European nation to basically say we're good to go. We're back on track. We're good. We can continue things the way just were before. And this is one of those news that I really wanted to bring, because this is something that really helps us to say, okay, like I said, and maybe I'm gonna sound redundant, but it's important for me to really emphasize the fact that we're on the right track. Okay, well, yes, it still requires a lot of patience from all of us, most importantly, but it doesn't mean that we cannot overcome this. All right, Denmark has already set one of the standards that we need to follow, and the consequence of it is that right now they're back to normal.
Yeah. According to the news that came out from the Associated Press, after more than 500 days, Denmark has ended its COVID restrictions. After exactly 548 days, and also Denmark has achieved a high vaccination rate of over 80%. And also those of them who are actually
Katie Seagal won a Golden Globe in 2011 for playing the matriarch of a motorcycle gang on This FX series.
Sons of Anarchy.
You got it.
Sounds like a better news.
Tells the story of a woman who suspects that the purely perfect homemakers in her community.
And that was a technical fault, ladies and gentlemen. So after the vaccination, according to the news, after the vaccination of over 80%. And for those age groups, which is 12 years and above, the government has decided to release its restrictions. How does that sound to you in Mexico, Miguel?
Well, in Mexico, basically, I believe we can see it as the way we have to do things. But one of the important things that we have to emphasize here is that it also requires from all the people in the country, right? There are countries that still cannot have the same success about vaccination ratings. There are some other places that I still don't believe why, but they are doing it. People doesn't want to get vaccinated because of some selfish and, in my opinion, very stupid opinions about possible like world domination theories and stuff like that. I mean, something that is so dumb that doesn't allow most of people that really understands the importance of this, go back to their real normal lives, because of some people they just don't want to follow the lead for something that is not even based or proven. So
could you tell us, Miguel? Could you tell us what's the vaccination rate like in the context of Mexico?
Yeah, actually, we're going, I would say, pretty well. I would like to say pretty well. I mean, yes, it's like I said the other day, it's not as fast as we would love to, but I believe we're going on the right track. At least now we're going to say that 65-70% of population is already vaccinated, but we're still taking measures, because we don't want another spread. We don't want another quarantine.
Yeah. Could you tell us about your restrictions now? Or are
right
there no
now,
restrictions?
There are less restrictions, for example, in restaurants, shops, movie theaters. That's one of the biggest business that really struggle with the pandemic because of the social distancing, right? Big events, for example, concerts, theater plays, they are receiving a lot more people. First, it was a 20-30% of audience allowed in, according to the capacity of every venue. But right now, the number is going little by little, increasing in these sectors of economy that really need the people to be in there, especially the restaurant sector. One of the measures that was, I believe, something that was just brilliant here in Mexico is, okay, you don't need people inside of the building. Okay, let's take the chairs and the tables outside.
Right. Miguel, is there an announcement that there's going to be like an official opening on the economy, or there is an announcement, or it's just a flexible look and see kind of situation now?
Yeah, it's more like a flexible thing. I mean, officially the pandemic it's not over yet here in Mexico, but officially it's more controlled. We cannot say that we are already there. We already overcome this, because there are still sectors of the economy that still require some other.
How are the numbers? Are the numbers going up, or the numbers came down?
Actually, the numbers are going up little by little. Fortunately, I am really happy to say that, honestly, because.
Could you say that again? The numbers of COVID cases, are they going up or going down?
Well, I would say that they are under control. Saying that they are lower or bigger, that would be a misunderstanding, according to me, of course, because if we're talking about, for example, the hospital capacities, hospitals that are focused on attending COVID cases are going down, but because of the success of the vaccination rating in Mexico, right? Of course, there are still some cases of people that is infected that also test positives and are like restricted to going other places, or maybe for going out of the country. For example, a lot of people they still have to do the PCR tests and stuff to prove that they are negative so they can travel. They are okay. They don't present the symptoms. They call it asymptomatics.
Yeah.
They have COVID, but they haven't present symptoms, and by definition, they're not gonna get bad. Let's say it that way, right? But it means that even though we can test positive, we know that the COVID is not going to affect population. This number is going up little by little, but it's going up. We still need to say that all the grown-up population in Mexico needs to be vaccinated, so we can proceed with the kids and the children. You know.
Can I ask, is there any cases of Delta variant in Mexico, or has it not happened yet?
Yes, they already happened. We already have seen some Delta variant there, but fortunately, it's something that is
Under
controlled.
control.
Yes, it's under control. Yeah, it would be irresponsible for me to say that we don't have the variant in Mexico, honestly. Um, but we fortunately we're controlling it, especially because people understand that we still are in this situation. So I guess we're going on the right track.
Right. Thank you so much, Miguel. I've got two
Oh,
news,
thanks
a
to you.
very quick one.
Yep.
The news coming up from Singapore main media, the Channel News Asia, that was published 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Top Japanese egg producer is to set up $100 million farm in Singapore, boosting local production of eggs to meet half of the domestic demand in Singapore. The top Japanese producer of eggs will set up Singapore's fourth egg farm, a move that will eventually boost total domestic production to meet half of the country's demand for eggs. From 2026, when it is operational, the factory, the egg farm will be able to produce 360 million eggs and 5 million day-old chicks every year. So this is significant that I've chosen for Miguel and also the listeners and the viewers and also the audience of Dr. Moby's Lifestyle TV USA. Now, this is significant for Singapore. It may not be so if you're from Mexico to talk about another farm that is selling eggs or producing chicks.
Oh, but I understand the significance that it has in the local economy. Okay, maybe yes, it's in the food sector. It's an egg farm. Okay, I got it. It may not be the flashiest news for us in Mexico, but we understand that it's part of the economic reactivation that we need at the end of the day, right? Also, a place like Singapore growing the way they are growing, it is also something that we have to keep our eyes on because we're talking about a potential economical partner, right? So it's always good to see that somebody's doing good so we can, start doing business together.
Yeah. So you are there.
Yeah, of course. I'll look at my face.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is significant for myself as a Singaporean and also for the audience worldwide. It's a reminder of the context. Singapore has got a few pillars that is very important. We have something called food security, water security, fuel security, and of course, food security is one of the basic security on par with military defense in Singapore. Because in Singapore, we actually import almost 90% of our food from around the world because Singapore being a small island and we have about 7 million people here, every inch of the land is given to urbanization. So we do not have any agriculture industry. And we're trying to grow the industry for food sufficiency to a small extent for the last 10 years. So we're talking about lab-grown meat right now, using cell-based a stem cell cultured meat in the laboratory to produce chicken meat and to produce beef because Singapore being really small and without any agriculture, we import food from China, we import food from Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, as far as Egypt, Australia, New Zealand, even as far as Brazil for beef. The reason being we do not have any food. And a lot of times, food security is important, particularly on the political front. If there is some dispute, for example, Singapore and China, China will not send its a rice or its a vegetable to Singapore. And also most of our rice from major countries, particularly in Vietnam, from Vietnam and from Thailand. And of course, if any of these countries cut off their food, and can you imagine during 2020, during the height of the pandemic, when the world shuts down, the first thing that the Singapore government did was to negotiate for opening of the lanes for food to come in to feed about 7 million people daily for 2020. So that is the immense significance of the news that I chose, because living in Singapore, we do not have water, we do not have fuel, we do not have food. That's about the country of Singapore, because we're talking
That's a big
about
issue.
urbanization in Singapore. So that's a very significant news for myself. And a final news, ladies and gentlemen, to broaden our discussion, is about Singapore. During 2020, ladies and gentlemen, a surprising Singapore records 7.5 billion in luxury property transactions in the first half of 2021. So for the first 6 months of this year, according to one of the largest real estate companies, Frank Knight report, wealth generated or imported into Singapore is driving demand for both landed and non-landed homes in Singapore. And according to the news, total sales volume for prime non-landed residential properties, that means condominiums and apartment, for the first half of 2021 amounted to 2 billion. Just talking about properties in non-landed meaning apartments for the first half of the year. And of course, the other half, about 5.5 billion Singapore dollars was on landed property. So that's some news for ladies and gentlemen, and for the audience, that there is still certain pockets of economy that is very buoyant. And as we pivot into mid-pandemic and post-pandemic, hopefully people can try to catch the train on pivoting into the economy that is still growing. So ladies and gentlemen, and Miguel, thank you so much. And that's my news for you about food security and also about real estate in Singapore. Miguel, back to you.
Yeah, no, actually, I wanted to ask you about it. What is your take about having this increase in luxury properties? I mean, because I don't know, it's just a perspective, but for me, it looks like Singapore is going to be like the Dubai of Southeast Asia. You know, this maybe it's not the biggest place with a lot of spaces, like you said, no farming spaces, but the economic activity is going real quick. And what is your take on it? Do you think that probably Singapore is going to be the next Dubai?
Singapore may not be the next Dubai, I think, but we're really close. Our property is almost has surpassed the price of Paris. Have some of the luxury apartments serve. They're on par with New York. But your question is a double-edged sword. If you are an investor, you are in the property market, that sounds good for you, because it means that you'll get capital gains. However, on the other side of the coin, if we're talking about the lay people, the Main Street people, it also can be a double-edged sword. It could mean that your property that you own, because Singapore, 90% of us own our property, we don't rent. It just means that there is capital gain if you realize that and if you're able to sell into the open market. However, it also means that the next generation of young people, when they come into the market with their income level and with that economy that they're in, you do not know if they will be able to catch up to afford that kind of property prices as they take over the economy in that next generation. So it's going to be passed on to the next generation. Some people win, some people will lose. Well, in
Yeah, of
Singapore,
course.
in Singapore, it is a political issue, and it's always debated during the election year, because we're talking about cost that is going to be passed down to the next generation. While this generation, you enjoy that, and also is in the hands of the few real estate people. And of course, you do see buoyancy, because for the last years that Singapore was on this train of nation building, a lot of people made we are able to make a lot of economic stride in the real estate, plus a lot of economic activity in every sector of the economy. However, the costs do go down to the next generation, and that's another worrying sign. And you've hit a good question, because that is also an election issue for the government that's going to be voted in the next cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I wanted to ask that because, okay, we understand that there's going to be an increase in the property and all the value that it has, but that little thing that you mentioned, like there's going to be a bigger breach between social classes, or economical classes, and maybe the people that can afford it, maybe in this generation or maybe in the next one, okay, maybe they can take advantage of it. But what's going to happen with the other side of the coin that is not going to be able to do it? What is going to happen to them? I mean, the properties, technically speaking, cannot lower their value, but they don't have something to make it to give it a bigger worth, to increase the value of the properties that they already have when they are not exactly in these areas,
Yeah,
or in this
I would think you did.
apartment buildings.
You brought up a very valid point about social class and social division, because if you're talking about extrapolating the scenario to a long-term basis up to 10 years, 20 years, because you're talking about cycle of real estate that kind of turn over every 3 years, and even could be faster because of economic turnover. And if you're talking about extrapolating it to the 10 years and 20-year cycle, where the next generation comes, that could be a problem in terms of, like what you say, a social divide or a class divide, because you've got those people who are able to catch the train, they go up, but people who could not catch the train, they could potentially go down. So therefore, it is about a policy issue, and that's very much debated here, about adjusting the policies about how to make the next generation catch up when they are now still not able to catch up. So I think you've got that a crucial issue that you've highlighted, Miguel.
It's something that I wanted to highlight because it's something that actually happens here in Mexico. I see it because there's a lot of real estate building construction, especially in Mexico City and Mexico's biggest cities, like, for example, Monterrey, Guadalajara, Querétaro. This particular city is growing a lot. The real estate value is increasing super quick, like really, really quick. But the gap that it created among the classes is just amazingly big. This percentage of people that can afford it here in Mexico, unfortunately, is not bigger than 10 or 15% of the total population. But the properties are there. Some of them have to be filled with people coming from other countries that come here to work or make business. And they are part of that mix, or they get involved into that mix, even though they don't want to. That's something that I wanted to.
That's a very valid point, and also it's a contentious point in all major cities. Like what you say, Dubai, in Hong Kong, that's a big deal now in Hong Kong. And also it's a contentious political issue there, and also in many parts of Asia, whereby you're talking about emerging economies that is booming in the capital cities. And that gap of people able to afford in the capital cities in Asia, it is so many times above that paycheck. So we're really talking about a potential cycle in the next 10, 20 years, which is quite a worrying sign for the next generation who's not able to keep up. Thank you so much, Miguel. We've got four
Oh,
news for you. Would you like to wrap up to say goodbye until we see you again next week for the next
well,
weekly
once
review?
again, just once again, Vicky, it is always a pleasure to be here with you sharing this news. We need to talk about a little bit perspective. Okay, yes, I have to come up with the COVID news. I'm sorry. I still have to do it because it's something we still deal with it. But fortunately, we bring something positive to the table, you know? And also, I also wanted to bring the 9/11 news because it's part of human history at the end of the day. Yes, it's highlighted so much because it happened in the United States. The Americans tend to make it a bigger deal that it really is. Of course, I'm not saying that it's not, but it doesn't mean that these things don't happen in other parts of the world. But being able to observe that they are able to remember the things that happened to them and overcome those things, learn from them, and become a bigger or better society, they're way, but they're a better society because of that.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And that's why you and I, we have a job as podcasters. You know, we join hands together. We forge understanding through communication. I get to know so much about Mexico through you. All these months, and I'm very sure you get to know so much about Singapore from
I'm
me.
learning a lot. I'm learning a lot. I love that process.
And I just want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Would like to give Miguel Flores a big pat on the back and also an applause for him for being my good co-host for the show. And also, ladies and
Always a
gentlemen,
pleasure.
please tune in next week, Miguel and myself, for World News Weekly Review. And I'm just thinking, Miguel, we should be doing one more show per week because it's like, it seems that the news we pick is just too little for that half an hour or 40 minutes that we
Probably,
do.
yes. Probably we should pick something a little additional, but we're going to work it
Yeah, we
out.
should we should work on the second episode for the week. Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you so much, Vicky. I'll see you next week.